Well, now Theresa May has reportedly begun planning for a snap election in November to save the Brexit talks, well, and her job as well. This comes after the EU leaders really mocked her plan, and indeed her. We are now at impasse. So, with enemies to the left of her and the right of her, what is Theresa May's next step? What should she do? If you think she should stick with Chequers, call 0345 6060 973. Maybe you think a general election is the only answer, in which case text to 84850. Or maybe she might listen to David Davis's plan. If that's how you feel, tweet using the hashtag Farage and LBC at LBC. And of course, watch and comment on Facebook. We're live from London next. I wonder how Theresa May's feeling this Sunday morning. I mean, she came up with her Chequers plan. It was something that the Eurosceptics in the country and the Conservative Party thought was an abomination. It led to the resignation of Boris Johnson. It led to the resignation, of course, of David Davis, who I was with yesterday. And then she thinks, well, it'll be okay, because at least Brussels will accept it. And we began to get one or two slightly warmer noises coming from Brussels. And then she goes to Salzburg, where she is openly and publicly insulted. You know, the photograph of all the men in suits and her on her own on the outside, the extraordinary Instagram that was posted by this Donald Tusk fella, cake but no cherries on top. I mean, they just could not have been ruder to her, nastier to her in every single way. They came across as the gangsters that I've often thought them to be, and for her it was humiliating. She genuinely, at that press conference, I thought on Friday, looked wounded. She came back, of course, with a press conference in Downing Street where she said, we have treated them with respect. It's about time they treated us with respect. And suddenly the Saturday newspapers sort of paint her out to be Boadicea. But the truth of it is, she's in a really, really tight spot. She appears strongly to be sticking with her Chequers plan, which I believe keeps her sort of half in and half out, is leading to a massive rift within her own party, and it's clear is not going to be accepted by the European Union. She's in a bit of a hole. And then this morning, front page of the Sunday Times, we get May's team plot snap election to save Brexit. It's reported here that a telephone conversation took place between a couple of Tory party workers, and the question was asked, what are you doing in November? Because I think we're going to need an election. So is a general election the best thing for her? Could she, particularly, bear in mind what we've just discussed, if the Labour Party plump for a second referendum option, could she then call a snap election and say, the only way you get Brexit is with me? That could be enormously powerful in the country. At least it would be if the Conservative Party had a clear position on Brexit. I was very struck this morning by a letter that I read in the Sunday Telegraph, which kind of summed up, I think, where many, many Tories are. Dear Sir, Theresa May has indicated that she is standing by her Chequers plan, and she also says she will respect the referendum result. Unfortunately, these two statements are mutually exclusive. Well, that is how people feel. People want, overwhelmingly, 75% of Tory voters are strong Brexiteers, but they do not want Chequers. So what should she do next? Should she, folks, chuck Chequers? Or should she go for a snap election, particularly if Labour decide they're going for a second referendum? She could win that election, but actually take us towards the softest of all soft Brexits. Now, the most interesting comment I've seen this morning from anybody in the Conservative Party is from Andrew Mitchell, Conservative MP for Sutton Coldfield. He was somebody who was a Remainer in the referendum campaign. I went to his constituency and did a big debate against Michael Heseltine. That was fun. And I've disagreed with Andrew Mitchell, but we've always been civil to each other in absolutely every way. He writes today, his comment piece, again in the Telegraph, he says, I have never known a time of such deep division in the Conservative Party. And he goes on to talk about Chequers, and he says this: leaving the European Union as a rule taker is a recipe for misery, division and ongoing feuding, which would truly deliver for Britain the worst of all worlds and the humiliating failure of the momentous changes set in train for the result of our referendum. They are incredibly strong words from Andrew Mitchell, who, as I say, supported the Remain side in the referendum. And what he's saying is that actually, increasingly, people are thinking, excuse me, that David Davis's plan is the right one. So what is David Davis saying? Well, I was with him yesterday in Bolton. David is saying, and I have to say, I've been saying this night after night over the last few weeks as well, there is a lot of unity now amongst those of us that really do genuinely want to leave the European Union, and it's this. Rather than waiting for them to come back to us, because that's what Mrs May said in Downing Street. It's up to the EU now to come back to us with proposals. Prime Minister, we've been trying that all the way through. It does not work. You know, the thought that they're going to smash the ball back to our side of the court, that's not where we need to be. It's about time we said to them, look, OK, Chequers doesn't work. We understand that. My own Eurosceptics don't like it. You see it as us cherry-picking from the single market. We're going to leave completely. We'll leave all the political parts of the European project, but we offer you, in return, a Canada-style trade deal where we buy and sell goods from each other without tariff, without us paying money, without free movement of people, without jurisdiction of the European Court of Justice. And I think that there's a good chance that they would accept that. Is that the way out? Is chucking Chequers what Mrs May should do? Or do you think she should call a snap election if Labour go for the second referendum option? Over to you. Nicholas in Rotherham, good morning.
Hi, good morning. I joined the Conservatives a few months ago in the hope of a leadership challenge. Now, it doesn't look like that's going to happen, but I'll take an election anytime, as long as Mrs May is not in charge. She has took 2 years to do nothing, and now she's suggesting we do nothing more. We had the vote on. We had the referendum. We voted to leave. Then we had an election. We voted to leave.
Yep.
Are they going to accept it again? We're going to have another election. Oh, vote for us. We'll get you to leave, but we won't. We'll leave you half in. Or we can go to Labour. We'll just completely ignore everything from the last 2 years, and we're back to square one again. I mean, it goes round in circles.
Well, Nicholas, if she uses a general election to basically get her Chequers plan through, I couldn't possibly vote for that, could you?
No, not really at all. Chequers it's not good enough. It's not even half of what I voted for. I mean, if they're doing anything, all they're doing is managing to annoy people more and more and more. I mean, the people I'd have in charge, I can't have in charge because of political differences. I mean, I'd put Guy Stewart in front of the EU and see what they do then, because they'd run a mile.
Well, I'd put Donald Trump. I'd employ Donald Trump, I think, and send him over there for a couple of days.
Too.
I mean, that might sort a few things out. Nicholas, when you joined the party, you joined the Conservatives wanting a leadership challenge. Who did you have in mind as your potential leader?
I'd like JRM. I know he won't do it. He doesn't want the job. But alternatively, I'd take David Davis all day long.
Okay.
The guy's brilliant.
Yeah, I must admit, I'm a fan of David Davis. I am a fan of David Davis, and maybe... And, you know, some will argue, well, he's 68, and is that a bit old? But he's in pretty good nick, I would say. Maybe he'd be a good caretaker Prime Minister to get us through. But at the moment, Nicholas, there is no prospect of her being removed as Tory party leader. And if they and I argued strongly on this show back in July that they should get rid of her. They didn't do it. They dropped the ball. Boris just, failed to use the knife, as I put it. And I think, Nicholas, you're stuck with her. Nicholas, thank you. I'm going to go to Milan, who's calling from Chiswick. Good morning.
Oh, Nigel. God, the last few days there's been a lot of chest beating with authority, but it's just been full of nonsense. There's lack of detail. I mean, you were saying Theresa May was humiliated by the EU. You seem to have a short memory about how you stood up and started slating the EU, but Boris Johnson did that. Theresa May started to conquer and try to divide and conquer different EU ministers. The fact is that Chequers was not even on the table. It's a complete garbled nonsense. You have two options. You either have complete independence from the EU,
yep,
or you have frictionless trade with the EU. You cannot have both. Some people will say, oh no, we'll go for a Canada-style free trade deal. That's fine, but you have to kiss goodbye to frictionless trade. You have to kiss goodbye.
Why?
To
No. Now, come on, Milan. You know, if you've got a free trade deal, that surely makes goods moving across borders very easy indeed, because there's no tariff to collect.
Nigel, stop being naughty here. You know very well that free trade does not equal frictionless trade. You know that. Stop misleading the public now, Nigel.
If there's no tariff to collect, where's the friction?
It's about goods, the regulatory alignment of goods. So
hang on. We at the moment are in full regulatory alignment with the European Union because they've been making our laws for 45 years. So there's no issue there either, is there?
We have a say in the laws for our MEPs and the elected members of the council. It's not them making laws, it's us making laws.
Whoever makes the laws, that's not the debate we're having here. What I'm saying to you is, we could do a Canada-style deal immediately if the European Union wanted to, and I'm certain European companies want to. It's very much in their interests, because there wouldn't be any issue over regulation, Nigel, would there?
No, but Nigel, you're missing the point. You're missing the point. Free trade does not equal frictionless trade. The reason we have frictionless trade is because we're in the single market. And so we have goods that align to regulatory.
So what should Mrs May do, Milan? What should she do?
Mrs May, if she... I would just get her a book and the study on the basic matters of Brexit. What she should do, if she was to save her career, is to say, look, I've made a massive mistake. I've made failure after failure after failure. Let's go for a Norway-style model to get us over the line, and then kick the can down the road, and then in the transition period, have a discussion of what happens at the end of 2020.
So go for European Economic Area as an easy way out of full membership of the European Union, yeah?
Well, to make it as a
okay, no, there is logic in that argument, absolutely. My big concern with it is it wouldn't deal with freedom of movement. That would lead to huge anger amongst Brexit voters, and I wonder, having gone to EEA, whether we wouldn't be stuck there forever. But there's logic to what you say, Milan. Thank you. You're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show here on LBC, and it is 11:15. Is Mrs May going to call a general election? Should she call a general election? Are the Labour Party about to open up a massive flank to her by going for a second referendum, and she can present herself as being the true voice of Brexit, even though she isn't? Because the Chequers proposal is not what we actually wanted, those of us that voted to leave. What should she do? Going to go to Jamie in Market Harbour as a new caller to this show. Good morning, Jamie.
Good morning, Nigel. How are you?
I am well. So, what happens now, Jamie? Come on.
Well, here's my thoughts. I think, if I remember right, 36% of the eligible population voted in the referendum. That means
73% did.
Voices that haven't actually been captured in any data.
Jamie, 73% turnout we had in the referendum.
No, I understand that 36%. Out of the figures I understand, 36% of the eligible population voted.
No.
That's how I understand it.
No,
I think, well...
No, 73%. 73% of those on the electoral roll, 73% turned out and voted in the referendum, which is a very, very high figure for modern-day Britain.
I don't believe that's the case. I believe
it is
36% of the eligible population, and therefore I believe it doesn't capture all the voices. And so if those voices haven't been captured, and you've got Labour have obviously come late to the table now, but if they are now saying the second referendum, which I believe is probably the right thing to do because more information is now...
No. Jamie, you're off beam. Jamie, you're off beam, mate. This was the greatest exercise in democracy in the history of the United Kingdom. A massive whopping turnout of 73%. That's the number that voted in it. A quite clear division between one side and the other of nearly 2 million votes. I mean, it's over, isn't it?
More people are informed. Yes, and I know that I will accept the fact that there are people hell-bent in leaving, and even if that means being worse off, I think LBC did a survey. But
because they believe in independence. But I mean, do you think, Jamie, a general election? I mean, let's say she calls a general election. Do you think that would sort this out?
Well, I think she'd be very cautious to, because of the reasons I've just given, in the fact that you're either a Brexiteer or a Brexiteer or a Remainer. And therefore, you are very, very divided. And I think that if the Labour Party do this and go for a second referendum, I think they'll get an enormous amount of support.
Well, Jamie, you may be right, but that was really the last hour's discussion, not now. Thank you. Going to go on to Majid in Peterborough. We've spoken before. Good morning, Majid.
Good morning, Nigel. How are you, mate?
Well, I'm all right. I'm just,
Yeah.
I honestly, I can sort of see this situation where she stands up in November and calls a general election and says, I am the true Brexiteer. Chequers is the way forward. And it really worries me. I desperately want her to chuck Chequers, Majid.
Well, I saw the speech when she made on the other day, and I spoke about it, and she was slapped down. I mean, she was humiliated. She was slapped down. She went around Europe trying to get a little deal behind everybody's back, and they turned around and said, no, it ain't going to happen. So I think maybe it's finally dawning on her that she's not going to get it. Whatever we ask, she's not going to get it. They're not going to give it to us. So, personally, my view is, and you know how I feel, Nigel,
yeah.
I think that she should go for an election. She should go for election probably in end of November, maybe start of December. But one thing they should make clear, that anybody who stands on a ballot should make his position clear on the European Union, on Brexit, which way they stand. So that way, don't in the middle, oh yes, maybe, or maybe
well,
not.
you can't force this, though, can you? But
Let
what?
the public vote.
But what, Majid, if she stood in a general election saying, I am the light, I am the truth, Chequers is the true Brexit? I mean, I couldn't vote for that.
I couldn't vote for it, but the thing is, Nigel, at the moment, we are so fractured. It's clear as soon as you pick the phone up. We are absolutely split. Families are turning on each other. This is not going to die overnight. We're not going to get a compromise. The only way we're going to get a compromise, and I hate to say it, it will have to be election, and whether if Labour play their cards right and they win, that's the way it's going to have to be. I know it's not right, but I can't see any other way for this country to just heal ourselves.
Right, so you see
We'll be going on this next year, the year after, the year after.
But I mean, Majid, having a general election is unlikely to be a healing process, is it?
It's a lesser of two evils, I think.
All right, OK, Majid, you've made your point of view. Majid thinks from Peterborough that we've got to do this. Now, I am going to go to Liverpool, to the Labour Party conference, to speak to Theo Usherwood. Theo, good morning.
Very good morning, Nigel.
So what news on the second referendum, Theo?
We're all scratching our heads because, of course, Jeremy Corbyn said that he would support members if they wanted a second referendum. He was facing intense pressure from the moderates within his own party, who had managed to corral members of Momentum, who, of course, are behind his two leadership wins, and then the trade unions as well, to support a second vote. He was facing defeat on the floor of the Liverpool debate on Tuesday. There was no way around it. He had to save face and say, well, I'll hand it over to members. So then that begs the obvious question. If there is a second vote, which way would you vote? And he was asked about that on the BBC this morning and gave this very, well, how should I put it? It wasn't exactly a clear answer.
We're having a debate at our conference and we will come to a conclusion on that. Our preference is that we will demand our 6 tests against the government, and our preference would be for a general election, and we can then negotiate our future relationships with Europe. But let's see what comes out of conference. We're a democratic party. We're very big. It's the biggest conference we've ever had.
And given that, do you feel bound by what the conference decides as the leader?
Obviously, I'm there elected as a leader of this party, elected as the leader in order to bring greater democracy to this party, and that's exactly what I've been doing for the past 3 years.
And will this party get a chance this week to vote on the issue of a second referendum, clearly?
There will be clear votes in conference. I don't know what's going to come out of all the compositing meetings that are going on.
And if, as a result of that clear vote, the conference says, yes, we want a second referendum, will Jeremy Corbyn deliver that?
Let's see what comes out of conference, and then obviously I'm bound by the democracy of our party.
But you'd be if there was another referendum now, with one option being broadly speaking stay in the EU and the other being broadly speaking leave the EU, how would you vote?
Well, that's conjecture as to what the question would be.
Well, I've just given you the question. In or out?
That's conjecture. We don't know what it will be. In the referendum, I wanted to remain and reform the EU. 40% of Labour voters voted to leave, 60% voted to remain. But do you know what? None of them voted to lose their job. None of them voted to have lower food standards. They all wanted a better economic performance in this country. The cry of many areas that voted leave was they're fed up with the way they're being treated by governments in this country.
So he is, Theo, he is tacking now much towards this second referendum position with those words, isn't he?
Absolutely. This is a big win for the Remain urban graduates, as James Cleverly, the Tory Vice Chairman, put it this morning. You know as well as I do that since the referendum, Labour has managed to create this confusion on purpose about where it really stands, because it needs to keep Labour traditionalists here in the West Midlands and the north of England on side, because of course they predominantly voted to leave the European Union, and then at the same time keep those younger voters, those members of Momentum who are so influential in going out and campaigning on the doorstep happy because they're big Remainers. And it's these two wings that he's managed to if you like, keep smiles on both of their faces by offering them
until now,
shadow ministers until now.
Yeah.
So now what happens? And you're talking about Theresa May, and this is where I think it gets interesting. I think Chequers was dead long ago, but right now the talk is that Theresa May ditches Chequers in her own mind, and if she goes to an election, a snap election in November, stands on a Canada-style trade deal versus Jeremy Corbyn, and this is where the second vote creates a real opportunity for the Prime Minister. She stands on the second vote and said, well listen, I really tried with Chequers, I tried to give the EU an offer, they rejected it, let's go to no deal, let's go to just a simple trade deal with the European Union. And then Jeremy Corbyn turns around and says, well, let's have a much softer Brexit, and Theresa May thinks that would be, the calculation is that would be a real vote winner with traditional Labour supporters.
Yes.
And she could overcome that hurdle. She could secure a bigger majority than the 15 to 20.
Yes, I mean, she could secure a majority, pretending for it to be a true Brexit, and then give us a soft Brexit with the cushion of a majority, I guess. But hey, Theo, we'll talk to you in the next few days. Well, that was Theo Usherwood there from Liverpool, from the Labour conference, and it's pretty clear, isn't it? It's pretty clear that what is going to happen in the next few days is Labour will endorse a second referendum. It is an electoral opportunity for Mrs May, if of course she did as Theo suggested and stood on a Canada style. We're going to go for free trade, we're leaving all political linkage, we'll go for a Canada deal, they'll accept it because actually BMW sell a third of their cars overseas in this country. I think if she did that against the Labour Party that wanted a second referendum, I think she'd win quite a big majority. Whether then, in government, she'd stick to her promises is, of course, a very, very separate issue. Morning, Nigel. A general election now will end in disaster for the country. May needs to be removed now and replaced by a Leave supporter before any election. I cannot vote Conservative. They do not currently represent my political beliefs, and I would never vote Labour. I would vote UKIP, but it remains on rocky ground and is still seen as unprofessional and too far to the right. Well, I have to say that the chances, folks, of Mrs May being removed, I think, get slimmer and slimmer with every week that passes. And I was very struck that when she stood up and said, we've treated them with respect, they must treat us with respect, and she's painted like Boadicea the next day in the Tory press, I thought, yeah, that's got her through the conference. She's very, very good at staving off the 48 letters going into the chairman of the 1922 committee. She is a very good political survivor, whether you like politically what she does or whether you don't. I find it, I have to say, I find it agony to watch her as Prime Minister, standing up, making big Eurosceptic speeches, and then making a whole series of concessions. But when Labour, this week, vote to be the party of a second referendum, vote to be the party that effectively wants to overturn the Brexit vote, the door is open for her to get a big majority. I think a general election, once that Labour vote goes through the conference, I think a general election becomes quite a possibility. Not saying it's right, but quite a possibility. You're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show here on LBC. It's 11:30. And so does Theresa May call a snap election in November, particularly after the Labour Party will adopt this week a position to adopt a second referendum? There is still a clear majority, folks, out there in favour of Brexit. That is a fact. What are the risks of that? Well, in terms of policy, she can sell herself as the true Brexiteer, even though she really isn't. But hey, she's really good. she's really good at making big speeches and pretending to be other than she is, and every single time the Tory press fall for it and paint her out to be a heroine, Margaret Thatcher Mark II. So that bit would probably work. But the real risk is, do you remember the last election? She was 21 points ahead in the polls. And the more the public saw of her, and the more the public heard her, the less the public believed in her. She got found out by the campaign, whereas Jezza went round the country like a sort of cool family uncle, offering money to students and to everybody, and he was kind of the cool kid on the block. When it came to the last general election campaign, Corbyn did well, May did appallingly, and that would be the biggest risk of this, that once again, in personality terms, she gets found out by the campaign as just being too wooden. Kevin on Facebook says, who do we vote for to ensure leaving the way we voted? Well, Kevin, that is the problem. But if this general election does come, that is exactly how May will position herself. Now, Kevin, let me say this to you. If she dropped Chequers and did, as LBC's political editor Theo Usherwood suggested a few minutes ago, go for free trade and no political linkage, then Kevin, she would be appealing directly to you. She would be saying, I will honour the Brexit vote in every way. Whether then, once she's got a comfy majority, she turned her back on that remains to be seen. I do have a huge problem believing what she says. Gina thinks Mrs May's got to get on with it and move quickly and swiftly in the interests of the country. Others feel very differently. May should resign now. I want a Brexit voting leader of the Tory party to take over, negotiate a free trade deal, and hold a general election on a full Brexit manifesto. I can't vote Conservative if May is leader, and that's the problem. Too many people simply just don't believe in her. On Twitter, I get that Conservatives dare not call an election, at least until they have the boundary changes implemented. Well, of course, the boundary changes would mean that each seat in Westminster was represented by pretty much the same number of constituents. And at the moment, Labour have a very, very big advantage here. They have to get fewer votes per MP than the Conservatives do. The point of the boundary reviews was to reduce the number of MPs to 600 and to have pretty much equivalence between the numbers representing each constituency. That probably would cost the Labour Party 20 to 25 seats. But there is zero prospect of those boundary reviews going through, zero, before any snap election happening in October. Nigel, I recently heard an LBC caller describe May's speech as Churchillian. Oh, dear. I would go one further, assuming the caller was referring to that insurance-selling bulldog who sits on the back shelf of a car, accommodatingly nodding, oh, yes. I'd say her dialogue with Brussels over the last couple of years could similarly be described as this. Fighting talk now is all well and good, but at this late stage of negotiations, it's surely too little too late. Mike in Bedford, love the message, but isn't it amazing? All she says is they should treat us with respect because we treated them with respect, and she's a heroine. I wish she'd said no British Prime Minister should be spoken to by unelected, jumped-up bureaucrats like Tusk in this manner. Now that I would have cheered. I didn't hear it, unfortunately. The Tories need to wait for the boundary changes before another election. Well, Chris, in Darlington, you see quite a few of you now onto this, but they haven't got on and done it. They will not have that option. Michael is calling from Muswell Hill. Hi, Michael.
Oh, hi, Nigel. Maybe I'm one of the few people. I've never voted Tory in my life.
Okay.
And probably won't, to be honest. But it seems to me Theresa May is one of the few politicians who recognises that the electorate is split down the middle. And any solution that we come forward with has got to recognise both sides of that division. It seems to me it's very easy as a Brexiteer or a Remainer to play to your own gallery. But if we come up with a solution that simply satisfies the Brexiteers, almost half the population is going to be unhappy. If we come up with another vote that satisfies the Remainers, then the other half is going to remain unhappy. So the only way forward, it seems to me, that you can bring the country with you is to come up with a solution in a way where nobody's completely happy, but everybody's sort of half happy, half unhappy.
Well, that's what she's been trying to do, Michael. But, there's an old saying, you can't please all of the people all of the time. And actually, by trying to please everybody, she's finished up pleasing nobody, Michael.
I know, Nigel, but we have an electorate that is in a way, the positions in the referendum are polarised opposites. But the reality is, the reality of the electorate is there's a lot of grey. There's a lot of people in between the extreme of the Brextremists on one hand and the Remainers on the other. Probably the vast majority.
Hang on, Michael.
Are in the middle somewhere.
Michael, how am I a Brextremist? I believe. Hang on. I believe in us being an independent country. How is that an extreme position?
Well, what I would say to you, Nigel, is that both camps, whether you're a Remainer or Brexiteer, represent possibly half the population, maybe either side of that middle line. So to go forward, Nigel, it seems to me you have to have a compromise. And you yourself said of the Chequers deal about 20 minutes ago, half in, half out, and I thought, Nigel, spot on. And whatever the detail we come up with, it is going to be half of something and half of something else. Otherwise, you leave half the population behind.
Well, I don't agree with you, but you've made your point very clearly. And if we are going to go for a half-in, half-out type situation, if that's where we're going to end up, I really hope we don't, but if that's where we're going to end up, Mrs May maybe then, in your view, is the right person to do this.
I believe the woman, and I said I've never voted Tory in my life, so I probably never will, but I think she has an incredibly difficult job. It is very easy to sit on the sidelines and pay to your own gallery. She has, as Prime Minister of this country, has got to bring the whole population together and forward. And, when the ERG, I think they're called, were asked to come up with a solution, well, they were found to be wanting in reality. And actually, and your mate Boris ran away when he could have stood up and be counted. So actually, I have a lot of time for the woman.
Okay.
But she is stuck in there.
Okay.
Really
no, Michael, you've made the point beautifully. I thank you very much indeed for your call. If Mrs May calls a general election, it could be seen as an escape route. She has committed herself to no second referendum, says Terry in Worthing. Well, Terry, she could fight a general election on, we're not having another referendum, we're leaving, and Labour would fight it on having another referendum. It would potentially give her a very big electoral advantage. Chris in Ottershaw says, what you've been saying is right. Walk away, let the EU come to us. Self-interest will kick in and they'll give us a good deal. Chris, what I'm saying is, let's put a deal on the table to them. There we are, guys. That's our final generous offer. Take it or leave it, and they would come back and agree. That's my view. Kevin is a new caller to this show. He lives in Warrington. Good morning, Kevin.
Good morning, Nigel.
Welcome.
I've voted Labour from the age of 18, and I'm 65 now.
Yep.
And I voted Brexit. And what Theresa May's trying to do isn't Brexit for me. If she went for the Canada-style option, I'd accept that.
Now, would you? Now, Kevin, you've been voting Labour for a very, very long time.
Yeah.
If she came out with a clear, all we want's free trade and friendship and no political linkage, could you really bring yourself to vote Conservative?
Yes.
Wow.
It's that strong with me now, this Brexit. It's a one issue with me now.
Yeah. Kevin, I think there are potentially 2 or 3 million of you out there. I think there are 2 or 3 million of you out there who have naturally been Labour, but this is now so important. But Kevin, she's got to clean her act up as far as you're concerned as a Brexiteer.
Oh, yeah, definitely, yeah.
Do you think she can do it?
Well, not really, no. I think she's really a Remainer and she's trying to appear as a Brexiteer, but she's not. I think really she needs to go. And somebody else.
Well, I've been saying that for a long time on this show, Kevin, but it's not been happening. Kevin, thank you for your call. Again, you see, You know, we had a caller in the last hour from Northumberland. There's another caller there from the north of England. He's 65. He's been voting Labour since he was 18. But if Mrs May was clear about really wanting Brexit, he would vote Conservative. If they did it, then even with her own personal failings and lack of campaigning skills, I think they could win a very easy majority. That is my view. You're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show here on LBC, and it's 11:45. Surrounded by enemies in her own party, enemies in the European Union. No one, it seems, supports the Chequers proposals. Well, about 12% of the country do, in an opinion poll published this morning. 12%. It's not really a very good number. Yet she appears to want to plough on with Chequers, and now we're told she could call a general election. And actually, if the Labour Party this week do, as we're virtually certain they will, plump for a second referendum, effectively become a Remain party, then, hey, she may get some benefit from it. Alan on Facebook says, Corbyn will go into this general election with a 15-point lead over May, not a 20-point deficit. Alan, you're wrong, mate. If Labour adopt this second referendum, just you wait and see what the opinion polls say about Labour at the next weekend. I am absolutely certain of this. You know, I was in a Labour stronghold yesterday. I was in Bolton. You know, and there are so many areas like Bolton. They are Leave areas, they are Labour areas, there's one Tory MP, but predominantly Labour areas, and actually this will go down like a lead balloon with the people I met in a couple of the pubs yesterday lunchtime on the outskirts of Bolton. It will not do them any good at all. Neil says, this is a case of Ramonas pushing us towards civil unrest. Dave says, we voted Leave, nothing in the middle. There isn't much in the middle, Dave, I agree. Leave means leave. What does Mike in Pickering think? Good morning, Mike.
Good morning. Like every other those northerners, the sooner we out full stop, the better.
I have to say, one thing I do like about the north of the country is you know where people stand on things, don't you?
Well, it's not only that, Nigel. We open our eyes. We don't need a bus to tell us how much we're losing to the European Union.
Right.
We're actually experiencing it. Not like London, that's cushy.
Yeah.
We have no public services up here. It's appalling.
Yeah, that point was being made to me yesterday as well, I can assure you. But the counter-argument, Mike, is that London pays all the taxes. But hey, we'll do that. We'll do him. And why on earth are we spending 100 billion quid on HS2 to benefit commuters and businessmen that can be in Manchester in 2 hours anyway? Mike, that's for another day. You got me worked up there. So, now, back to the question. Is Mrs May going to call an election, and is that the right thing for her to do?
Well, what I can understand is whatever happened to the Fixed Term Parliament Act of 2011?
It's still in place. No? It's still in place. So for this to happen, she would need to get 2/3 of MPs to agree. But the Labour Party, of course, would agree.
Yeah.
And if it was Conservative Party policy, they would agree. So this Act of Parliament is there, but it doesn't really mean that much.
Well, it's not only that. I mean, those who wanted to leave, like Jacob Rees-Mogg, etc., need to move quickly now and call a bluff or call a motion of no confidence against her. But you still need a fortnight if, kind of majority of MPs want another election. So that's 14 days.
Yeah.
You would be well over November. But there's a lot more to this. I was listening to John McDonnell yesterday.
Yep.
And I think Watson needs to be careful what he wishes for, extremely. Because you were right in your article, absolutely right, that you can't nationalise the railways if we're still in the EU.
Yeah, no, I made that point. You're absolutely right. And this is one of the bizarre things, that there are so many things that Labour appear to want to do that you could not do as EU members. No, I get that, Mike. I do get that. So how do we... So where do you, Mike, from Pickering, how do you see this Mrs May talked about impasse between her and the European Union, but this deadlock in British politics, how's it going to get broken?
First of all, she admits a mistake. If Brexit means Brexit, she's true to her word.
Yep.
She just leaves.
Yep.
Then she just goes with it. Kind of everything. She just comes out WTO completely. Because Brexit means bumbling Westminster, and you don't want to leave Westminster in charge of Brexit any longer. We just leave.
Would an election, Mike, on a manifesto that you agreed with, would a general election sort this out?
No. But more to the point, I agree with MacDonald that we need to nationalise the railways.
Okay.
So, the East Coast main line worked brilliantly when they had to withdraw.
Yeah, a lot of people say that. I've never been greatly in favour of nationalisation. I generally think the state does things badly, but that argument on the East Coast line has been made. Mike, thank you, and Mike pointing out that so much of party manifestos can't be done if you govern from the European Union. Peter says, I hate the Conservatives, but I will vote Conservative to save the country, i.e. to deliver Brexit, if Labour is for Remain. I will never vote Labour in that case. Nigel, please let Labour leaders know how many Labour supporters feel this way. Peter, I have been trying to do so for some time. I'm staying in Yorkshire. I'm going to Hull to speak to Angus, a new caller to this show. Hi, Angus.
Good morning to you, Nigel.
Good morning,
nice
and
to
welcome.
Talk to you.
Welcome.
Alton Bryson Howden, actually, is where I'm from, East Yorkshire.
I was with your member.
You were with
Parliament.
DD yesterday,
I
weren't
was.
you?
I was. There's quite one or two entertaining photographs in the newspapers of us today. But so, Angus, what's to be done? What should the Conservative Party do? What is Mrs May's next big move?
Very good question. Very good question indeed. I mean, I think, Nigel, and I agree with many things that you say, there's got to be something clear on the mandate if we're going to go to a general election.
Yes.
I think what you said, I completely agree with. Get the people on your side. The people voted for this, for goodness sake.
Twice.
And, yes.
Twice.
And be clear about what the mandate is. It could be, the Labour Party could be opening up a great opportunity. If they vote for this thing today or over the next couple of days at the Labour Party conference, to offer a second referendum, and quite rightly, it's not a people's vote; it's a corporate vote from people who don't see, and don't want to trust the people of this country. 17.4 million people of them who voted to leave the EU.
Yep.
We need a clean Brexit, and if the Prime Minister, if she remains in place, goes to the country on those kind of terms, Nigel, then there's a chance of a decent general election victory, and to honour the vote. Because, as we know, if we don't honour this vote, the biggest popular vote we've had probably in our history.
Angus, what it does, I mean, I've got a message just come in here as you've been speaking to me from Charlie on Facebook, who says, we had a democratic vote, the result was leave. If we don't, democracy is dead. It's a fair point, Angus, isn't it?
It makes a complete mockery of our democracy. And, the Irish have been bullied into having a couple more votes.
The Danes.
We should. It reminds me, Nigel, of a film I saw earlier in the summer. I took my dad to it, called The Darkest Hour.
Yep.
When Winston Churchill was being told, we're too small, we're too pathetic, we're too this.
Let's do a deal with Hitler. That was the establishment view, wasn't it?
Hitler.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
Absolutely.
That's what they wanted. And luckily he didn't. There are times to be brave, there are times to go it alone. Angus, great call. Thank you. On Twitter, I get Chuck Checkers. If she chucks it and goes for Canada, then unpopular or not, she would gain a majority. And I have to say, I think that is absolutely true. I wouldn't trust her, of course, having been elected, to honour it, because I don't trust her one bit after her performance as Home Secretary and Prime Minister. But I think maybe Labour is about to really give her a huge electoral gift. My last caller on this subject this morning is Chris, who's calling from Barnet. Chris, what does Mrs May do now?
She will... What she'll probably do is she either step down 2 weeks after the 29th of March, or if she doesn't get any sort of when they come back, is in a few days' time from the recess. It's a few days' time, isn't it?
Yep.
Back to Parliament. If she feels that she doesn't have her work, feels that she's not backed by more than half of our party, she might step down in the next 2 weeks.
Oh, but she's not going to step down now, Chris, and cause a leadership crisis right in the middle of the crucial phase of trade negotiations, is
probably
she?
Not, no.
I mean, that isn't going to happen.
But she probably wants to.
Well, I don't know. Chris...
Oh, hang on, because what it is that... you become a cult figure over the last 10 years.
Right.
And the thing is, I'm a Remainer. I see that there's more losses than gains when we when we leave on the 29th, because all the deals have to be done by next month, don't they?
Chris, what price independence? What price freedom? What price running our own country and not having those awful thugs and gangsters telling us what to do? Chris, I'm out of time. I'm sorry. We could continue that for a lot longer. But we are finished. We are out of time. Fascinating. Will Labour vote to endorse that second referendum? I believe they will. I think it'll damage them hugely. You've been listening to the Nigel Farage Show here on LBC. I'm back tomorrow night at 6. This afternoon at 3 o'clock it's Ian Payne. But up next, it's Majid Nawaz.
Thank you, Nigel.